Hello, everyone. I'm Jack Fisher. Welcome to my world, and welcome to another Jack Quick Reacts. It's not scripted. There's no video essay. Not trying to make a big, larger point here. This is just me talking into my microphone, reacting, stuttering, saying weird things because and not editing anything. And I need to do that now because I just got back from seeing Deadpool and Wolverine, and I want to make sure that I can get my reaction in while it's still fresh and while I'm still. My throat's still a little sore from laughing and cheering so much. So yeah, I think that should give you a clue as to how I felt about the movie. And I don't think I've hid my excitement for this movie for anyone. I mean, this has been a team up that I think everyone has been hoping for since the first Deadpool movie came out. And we probably never thought we were going to see it, especially not after Logan. But here we are. We finally got it. Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds teaming up as Deadpool and Wolverine in a movie that it had a lot to live up to. I mean, there's between all the marketing that's been done about it, all the hype that's been going around it, or going back to the Super Bowl trailer. This movie had a lot to live up to, and the first two Deadpool movies, they set a pretty high bar, and so yeah, they had to go extra hard to make this third one great, but I'll just come out and say it. It delivered. Set the hype, the marketing, all that stuff aside, this movie, it delivered a truly fun, enjoyable, and just plain satisfying cinematic experience, and also a very unique cinematic experience that I want to get into. But before I go any further, just want to say first, I am going to drop some spoilers. I'm going to try not to drop as much as I usually do, because I really do want people to go out and see this movie and take it all in themselves, because there are a lot of parts of it that are definitely worth not spoiling. But I am going to have to spoil some stuff because I'm not going to be able to stop myself, because it was just such a one of those movies that it hits the ground running. It goes hard from the first few minutes. Now, if you see the first two Deadpool movies, you know how those movies have a lot of fun with sort of the opening credits and sort of the opening scene. It's always sort of a moment where you see Deadpool. He's in the middle of doing something insanely violent or crazy, and you kind of have to go back and see how he got there. And this movie does kind of have a similar setup. But I will say that this movie, I think, was Deadpool and Wolverine definitely had one of the most entertaining, not to mention brutally violent setups of any of the previous Deadpool movies, pretty much of any superhero movie or any R-rated movie. And I know it's saying a lot, but this movie, what it really does well early on, it sets the tone that this movie is going to be, it's not going to be your standard PG-13, superhero flick. This is a movie that is going to be, it's violent. From the very opening scene, it is bloody, it is brutal. It does not try to hide how violent it is. In fact, it seems to relish, it feels kind of like, just that first sequence was like Fox and what was left of Fox and Disney sort of just, taking the shackles off, telling Deadpool and Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool, hey, go nuts. Do not hold back. Do not feel like you have to water down the violence just to make the movie work and get it past the ratings. Because they went hard. The amount of violence in that opening sequence, trust me, if you're squeamish about blood, you might want to look away. But it does kind of balance itself out in a very powerful way. One thing this movie, also the other thing that the opening sequence did is it set some of that violence to, catchy and upbeat music. I mean, it didn't try to. It wasn't all, dark or grim or anything. It tried to be playful with all this horrific violence. And you know what? That works. That is perfectly in line with the tone of Deadpool, going all the way back to the days of the comics. He does get into, he is a very violent character and he does a lot of violent acts, but, he finds a way to keep it fun and lighthearted. And, the first two Deadpool movies embraced that. This movie embraced that even more. But beyond just, that establishing just the right tone and showing that Ryan Reynolds, he has not lost his touch. He still perfectly and beautifully embodies Deadpool to the utmost. But this movie actually does something that the other movies have done well, but I think but this one is a little more ambitious because even though the Deadpool movies, they're known for just being fun, more goofy, and more mature superhero movies. This movie, every Deadpool movie actually, they do try to give it a personal touch. They don't. It's not just about action. It's not just about Deadpool chasing a MacGuffin or having to kill one particular person. There's always just a personal element to it. First movie, he was trying to win back Vanessa. Second movie, he was trying to save Vanessa, but the stakes are a lot higher in Deadpool and Wolverine because he's not just trying to save Vanessa. He's not just trying to save his friends. He's trying to save his entire universe. He finds out early on that his universe is going to end. He gets a visit from the TVA, Time Variance Authority, the same people we saw in Loki, but this isn't the same. It's not. But even if you haven't seen any episodes of Loki, if you don't even know anything about the TVA, watching that show is not required. You can go in blind and kind of grasp what's going on. All you really need to know is that the TVA has there's a certain faction of the organization that wants to do more than just prune timelines or try to manage timelines. They want to be more ambitious, and it's why it's being led by a guy named Paradox, who is a character from the comic. He's played by Matthew McFadden, and he doesn't just want to let timelines devolve. He doesn't want to just let doomed timelines die off naturally. He wants to be more. He wants to refine the whole timeline because the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that's still the sacred timeline. They still want to preserve that as much as they can. But all the other timelines, like Deadpool's timeline, which is I think 10005 or something. Forgive me if I get that wrong, but he wants to make. He has a way of essentially erasing timelines, destroying them completely to make way for to clear the path and purify the other timelines. It's very callous, but one of the things that makes that does kind of raise the stakes is even though Deadpool's timeline is doomed, Deadpool did make his presence felt by the TVA just because of the events of Deadpool 2. Remember, if you saw the post-credit scene of Deadpool 2, you saw him traveling back in time and kind of messing with the time. He had to modify his timeline in order to save Vanessa, and he kind of did some other things. We also found out he tried to use Cable's time device to actually visit the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He's been there before. He knows about it, and he actually tried to join the Avengers because he thought that this felt like a natural progression. He wanted to have a bigger purpose than just being a hired mercenary. And that does kind of show more ambition. And we learn later on in the movie that ambition doesn't come from nowhere. It's something that Vanessa's kind of encouraging. But when the Avengers reject him, when he kind of finds that when he's told, look, you don't understand what it means to be a hero. You don't understand what it means to be an Avenger. You're still just Deadpool. And you don't, appreciate or really comprehend what it means to be a hero. I mean, the fact that he wants to be a hero again after being told, after saying in the first movie he's not one, it's a big shift. But when he's kind of rejected, even though it feels like he's come around, he wants that role. But when he's rejected, it just leaves him kind of empty inside. He feels like he doesn't matter. He saved Vanessa. He saved his world, but after that, he just kind of, he just sort of gives up. He ends up working as a used car salesman simply because, he just can't, he feels like, being something greater is beyond him. So, then he gets it. But another good thing that this movie and other previous Deadpool movies have done is they've done it does a very good job of giving Deadpool a certain level of agency, and gives everyone a certain level of agency in choosing. You can have what you want, but it comes at a price. And Paradox says, we've seen you. We know that you've messed with the timeline before. You are clearly more capable than most. So we can give you another chance. You could continue living on in the sacred. We'll take you to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and you could be their new. You could live amongst heroes. You could be the hero you wanted to be. The problem is his timeline was going to be destroyed, and that's understandably bothers him. And so, even though he had that choice, he says, nope, he wants to save his timeline. But the problem is he can't save his timeline because one of the reasons his timeline is decaying in the first place is it's lost its anchor. And that anchor wasn't Deadpool, it was Logan. And that's another big thing that this movie does work well. And it's not really much of a spoiler because it was already sort of revealed. But in Deadpool's timeline, it finds that's the same timeline as the Logan movie, the one where Logan, sacrifices himself to save Laura and the rest of the young mutants. And it was a very emotional, very dramatic end to his character and to his story. And this movie does not entirely it doesn't. I won't say it leaves it untouched because again, the opening scene, once you watch it, you see there is it does play with it a little bit. But that ending is still intact. But the problem is with Wolverine, with Wolverine gone in his timeline, it's done, and Paradox is gonna prune it, and Deadpool has to find a way to save it. But in order to do that, he needs to find a Wolverine. So he ends up stealing some of the TVA's devices, and he starts traveling throughout the multiverse, trying to find a Wolverine to be that anchor in his timeline, so it doesn't get destroyed. And I won't spoil how many other versions of Wolverine he encounters. Some of them comic fans will recognize. Some of them are just jokes that are hilarious. And but eventually he does find one Wolverine, and it's the Hugh Jackman Wolverine wearing the iconic Wolverine costume that he never got to wear for 20 years. And yeah, even though he was quote unquote the worst Wolverine, he still feels like the best Wolverine we've ever gotten on the silver in a movie. Setting aside the Wolverine we got in Logan, like this version of Wolverine, he feels like he was ripped right from the comics. He feels like he could have been in an episode of the old X-Men cartoon or in X-Men '97. He's definitely in a dark place. He's very broken. But for a good reason. I won't spoil the whole reason, but this version of Wolverine, it's simple, and it's simple in that he is the way he is for a reason. But him getting dragged along into Deadpool's story, that is kind of it's very unwitting at first, and it creates a very tense and hostile dynamic between them that really lasts almost until the end of the movie, but. It's a great dynamic because it's perfectly in line with what the dynamic they've always had. Wolverine and Deadpool have never been really good friends. They've never been hated enemies. Wolverine does not see Deadpool the same way he sees Sabretooth or Magneto or Apocalypse. But their dynamic here, you could tell that both Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman were having a lot of fun with this take on the characters. They can go from working together to maiming each other. There's a lot of spit and swearing, cursing at one another. It's really they definitely take full advantage of the R rating. But what really kind of gives this movie a lot more depth and a lot bigger scope is what happens when they find themselves in the wasteland. Now, this is the same wasteland we saw in Loki. Again, you don't really need to know much about. It doesn't really. The show is mentioned just as a fourth wall break, but this wasteland that they find themselves in is kind of like a dumping ground for people and things that have been pruned or removed from the timeline to preserve the timeline from the TVA. So we do see some familiar things. We actually do see the 20th Century Fox logo you saw in the trailer. That's there. Kind of it is sort of a tongue-in-cheek reference to the fact that 20th Century Fox and the X-Men movies they made for all those years they're defunct now. They can't exist. But that's kind of that kind of also is a sign that this movie is also going to sort of embrace some of the elements from those Fox movies. It's going to embrace the pre-MCU Marvel movies in a way that it never had a chance to, and it leads to some incredible moments. And this is actually where Cassandra Nova comes in. Now, while Paradox he's very much sort of the main. He's a big antagonist here, but I think Cassandra Nova quickly usurps him over the course of the movie. Now, again, Cassandra Nova is different. She's not a really well-known villain compared to other Marvel characters, unless you are well versed in the X-Men comics or in Marvel comics in general. You probably aren't going to know where she is, but after this movie, I promise you, Cassandra Nova, her profile as a villain is going to rise a lot. The actress who played her, Emma Corrin, she really steals the show in a lot of scenes. She definitely, she's not just a powerhouse. It's not just that she has psychic abilities that are on par, if not bigger than Charles Xavier. But there's both a complexity and a ruthlessness to her that is just, it's hard to put into words, but man, it's amazing. She's not Thanos, but she's definitely by the end of the movie, she is a threat that is definitely on that level. She is a much bigger threat than anyone expected her to be, because what she sort of just carved a place for herself in this void, in this wasteland, and everyone else who was around her, every other character from a lot of them from the Fox movies who got pruned or removed from their timelines, they basically had to either work for her or they ended up getting devoured by the time creature Arinth, who also another character from Loki, but that thing doesn't play as that thing is nothing compared to Cassandra Nova, because what she ends up doing when she learns what both Deadpool and Wolverine are trying to do, trust me, she makes her presence felt in a way that no other villain throughout the multiverse has. I mean, I know the multiverse saga has been mixed throughout the MCU, but this movie, it is sort of like a direct response to how the MCU has handled the multiverse, and not just in terms of plot, but there's a lot of there's more fourth wall breaking than usual in this movie, in that it does kind of acknowledge that the multiverse stories have been a little messy, is probably the nicest way you could put them. But this movie, it doesn't try to make excuses. It doesn't try to fix everything that the MCU did. It stays relatively concise in terms of the stakes are about Wolverine and Deadpool and their respective universes, and how they try to save what they can save, because they're both in different places. Wade Deadpool, he has a universe he wants to save. Wolverine, he has none, so he has to sort of like find one. And this is kind of where we do end up actually meeting some other. If you followed some of the old Fox Marvel movies, you will see some familiar faces, and you will see a few very recognizable faces. I won't spoil all of them. I'll just say that one of them is someone who we never got a chance to see in a Fox Marvel movie, even though he was teased a lot. And there was another, and the other one that actually, I don't mind spoiling, is Daphne Keane returns as X-23. And I got to say, she was definitely one of she didn't get as much screen time as I wish, but she made every scene she was in count. And her dynamic with Hugh Jackman's Wolverine is just, it really adds a more personal stake to the version of Wolverine we get. He adds a personal stake to the overall story, and that, I think, is sort of what a lot of these multiverse stories have been lacking. They feel just too much of we got to save the world and save a few people, but this movie, more than anything, it makes everything a lot more personal. In saving the universe, saving the multiverse, that's fine. Stopping Cassandra Nova and Paradox, that's fine. But it always sort of comes back to the personal touch. Deadpool, he constantly says, "I just want to save the people I love." Wolverine, he's just kind of he wants to see if he can undo what happened to his world, and even if he can't, it's still a personal struggle for him. And compared to look to Cassandra Nova or Mr. Paradox, there's nothing. They're very impersonal in terms of how they approach everything. They see the multiverse. They see everything around them as sort of like an excuse to be completely unhinged and do and break rules and do whatever the fuck they want. It's there were a lot of F-bombs in this movie, and so that's something to be prepared for. And there is sort of an interesting contrast there in terms of both Paradox and Nova. But what I think, what I also think makes this movie work so well is just how it really sort of just embraces the fact. It doesn't hide from the fact that it's a superhero movie. It does not take itself too overly seriously. It's just serious enough to to stay personal. It strikes just the right balance. So, and also, it has fun along the way. This is probably the most fun you've seen Hugh Jackman have as Wolverine, and he's a lot less brooding. He's a lot less whiny and a lot less sort of distant than he is in some of the other X-Men movies. Even though I still think Logan is probably a better Wolverine movie. Yeah, he's still this movie. Hugh Jackman's Wolverine here is definitely he raises the bar. He proves, no one else, he really has embodied this character for 20 years. And this movie will remind you why he is the face of Wolverine. He'll always be Wolverine to some extent. And it's I don't want to spoil how it ends. I'm tempted, but there's a lot of it's a very satisfying and very well earned conclusion to these stories. It was personal for both Deadpool and Wolverine, and the way they get to the end, the way they deal with it, it's a hell of a ride. That's probably the best thing I could say about it. It is a ride from start to finish. It's a violent ride. It's a bumpy ride, but in the best possible way. You will get a lot of violence. You will get some really creative fights. Like this movie does take full advantage of the fact that Deadpool and Wolverine have healing factors, and they can heal from gruesome injuries. It also takes full advantage of the powers of every character. Like every character gets a chance to do something unique with their abilities, whether it's Cassandra Nova using her psychic abilities, or X-23 using her unique using the claws in her feet, and also there are other versions of Deadpool in this movie. That was something else that came out in the trailer, and there are some that stand out more than others. There's one in particular that I'm sure is going to raise some eyebrows, but it's again, this movie really did sort of have fun with it. It did not try to It did not try to reinvent it or make it seem too watered down. It went it embraced everything that makes Deadpool great, and it finally kind of gave us the Wolverine we've been waiting for. I mean, this is a Wolverine who, I've said this in previous videos. This is, for once, Wolverine does not spend this movie whining about a woman who died on him. He doesn't spend the movie pining for Jean Grey or Silver Fox or anyone who's broken his heart. He's very much a broken version of the character of Wolverine, but it's not just because of a woman. And I think that's really, really important, because I've laid this criticism before. The Fox movies have usually done Wolverine very, very wrong. With the exception of Logan, they've always kept his motivations really, really bland. But this movie really, Wolverine feels more like an X-Men character, and not just the character with the X-Men as a supporting cast. So that is something that I thought was so refreshing and so overdue. I can't believe it took him 20 fucking years to give us this version of Wolverine, not only wearing the costume, but embodies everything about Wolverine that makes him awesome. So that even though this is, it's a Deadpool movie, it still feels like it gave us the Wolverine that none of the other X-Men movies had given us. And yeah, as long as it took, I'd stay worth it. Worth the wait. I waited 20 years. I'll totally worth it. I'll go on record as saying that. And in terms of connections to other parts of the MCU, that's actually very minor. This movie does not try to impact the MCU, makes references. It doesn't try too hard to rewrite the multiverse, or it is a much more self-contained movie than I expected it to be. And I mean that in a good way. And it's a movie that you can watch, it fits perfectly with the previous 2 Deadpool movies, and it fits perfectly with the rest of with other Fox movies. But the thing that I think that also stands out, that kind of makes this movie feel extra special, is it does feel like more of a love letter to all those Fox Marvel movies that are just defunct now, going all the way back to the first X-Men movies, to the Blade movies of the 90s, to the Fantastic Four movies of the mid-2000s. It really kind of feels like this movie is sort of giving that Fox era a proper send-off, because a lot of them did not get proper endings. A lot of those movies never got sequels, because a lot of them did suck. I can't really hide that fact. But this movie at least acknowledged that those movies existed and they still mattered on some level. And it's really cool how they were able to work some of that into this movie. And they even got some of the old Fox, a lot of the Fox cast besides Hugh Jackman. Aaron Sanford as Pyro. He really steals the show in a few cases. So I hope he gets a chance to do more. And there's a lot more I could say. There's some really cool moments that I'm sure are going to make amazing memes, and that in terms of what this means for the future. Without spoiling too much, the door is definitely open for more Wolverine, for more Deadpool, and it's also has definitely broken the mold in terms of how much violence and cursing will be allowed in a superhero movie, and there's just a lot of things to like about it. Now, there are some drawbacks. I will say that this movie did go a little overboard with the fourth wall breaking in some areas. Because there were some times where it disrupted the flow of things, but I didn't take away from the plot, or it didn't feel too ham-fisted. It was just, it was more excessive than usual. And I think I think that was kind of by design, because the fact that it could reference the entire MCU more so than previous Deadpool movies. They had to be very careful because of movie rights in the past, but this movie did not. So they kind of took advantage of that. And but other than that, there's not a whole lot of drawbacks. This was a fun movie. Might not be for everyone because of all the violence, and it does have some of the issues that other multiverse stories have told, simply because it has, you see all these variations of characters, and sometimes that can dilute the scope of the movie. But again, movie manages to avoid other mistakes that other multiverse movies have made, and I think this movie will definitely it's definitely going to be one of the most entertaining superhero movies. It definitely keeps the spirit of other previous Deadpool movies, and it was just such a fun experience. And it was a long time coming. It took we wanted to see Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman team up. We got it. It was worth the wait. That's what I'm going to say. That's the best thing I could say about this movie, among many others. So I encourage everyone, if you're a fan of Wolverine, Deadpool, X-Men, Marvel, superhero movies in general, this movie will be fun. If you're squeamish about a lot of blood and violence, maybe skip lunch or dinner. But other than that, I love this movie. Had so much fun watching it. So thank you all very much. Again, this has been Jack Quick Reacts. So thank you for joining me in my world. And until next time, everyone, take care and stay safe.